In this video, I'll be sharing a few tips for songwriting. The first tip will be for those of you who have written a few songs. The second will be for those who have never written a song. And the third will be for those who have written many songs. My name is Andrew with rockclass101.com, and let's jump into our first tip, which is get inspired. Now, if you've written a few songs before, you know that it's hard to just sit down with your uke in hand and say, hey, I'm going to write a song. Because more times than not, when we try to do that, nothing comes out. And I think the reason why is that it's hard to be creative if you don't have an idea of what you want to write about, or you're not feeling some kind of emotion in that moment in time. So the big question is, how do we find inspiration to spark our creativity? Well, when I think of inspiration, my mind immediately goes to something big, like that dream vacation in Hawaii. And I'm not going to lie, that actually does work. Take a listen to this tune that I wrote after I found myself in paradise last year for 7 days. So big props to my friend Matt for performing that piece. But I want to go ahead and state that we don't have to do something grandiose to be inspired. Inspiration can come in our day-to-day life. Let me give you an example. A few years ago, I matched with a really cute girl on a dating app, and we were texting back and forth and it was going really, really well. And I had all the butterflies just floating up inside of me, and that was enough to inspire me to write this beautiful piece of music. While love can be a powerful emotion for inspiring music, it is not the only emotion that we can draw from. One medium that I like to look towards for inspiration is artwork. And when I'm looking at art, I can feel all kinds of emotion. I can feel happy to sad to anger to fear. I mean, any emotion that you can think of. And one of my favorite forms of art is movies. So let me give you another example. A few years ago, I watched Interstellar, and it is, if you've never seen it, it is an epic journey through space and time. Now, it stars Matthew McConaughey, he's the main character, and you feel all of these emotions that he goes through on his journey, and it is a crazy journey. But as the viewer, you are taken along on that epic emotional ride with him. and it is a movie that leaves an impact on you long after you've watched it. So much so that I found myself writing this piece of music weeks after I saw it. So, our first tip was to get inspired, and we can find inspiration from an experience that we go on, from an emotion such as love, or from watching other artwork and just feeling something inside of us. Now, the idea of this first tip was to give you a starting point to write from instead of beginning from a blank canvas. So let's go ahead and move on to our second tip, which is going to be for those of you who have never written a song, because I know you're sitting there saying, well, I can get inspired, but I have never written a song. So where do I start? Well, we're going to write a song together, and let's jump into it. So tip 2 is to keep it simple. Now, this is our first song, so we're not trying to write Bohemian Rhapsody with 1,000 voices and tons of instruments and all these layers of music going on at the same time. Instead, we want to keep it simple. So to begin, the first thing we have to do is we have to recognize what are the 3 parts of music. Well, the 3 parts are melody, harmony, and rhythm. Now, I think most of us know what melody is, but just for fun, let's ask ChatGPT to define it for us. A melody is a sequence of musical notes arranged in a recognizable and often pleasing pattern. It is the part of a musical composition that is usually most easily remembered and sung or played. Now, harmony can be thought of as the chords that are played behind the melody. And rhythm, well, that's the glue that ties everything together. Now, when I was a private instructor for 11 years, I saw that students prioritized melody and harmony much more over rhythm, but all 3 parts are equally important. They should be weighted equally. Let me give you an example. If I was to clap out a rhythm, I want you to tell me what song it is just from hearing this rhythm. So, pretty easy to guess. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. So you could tell the name of the song just by hearing the rhythm. We didn't have melody, we didn't have chords, aka the harmony. All we had was the clapping, right? All we had is the rhythm. So rhythm is equally important. Now, let's go ahead and jump into writing this tune. The first thing that we have to do is pick a key to write out of. Let's go ahead and pick the key of C because it has no sharps and no flats. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to pick a chord progression. And remember, let's keep it simple. So let's pick a very common chord progression. How about a 1, 5, 6, 4, which gives us C, G, A minor, F. And And I'm just playing those basic stock chords. So with that in mind, the big question now is, what is the form of the song going to be? Well, how many bars are we going to play each chord for? What if we just keep it simple and do one chord every 2 bars? So if we have 4 chords and we're playing one chord every 2 bars, the form of our song is 8 bars in length. So that means that bar 1 is C, bar 2 is C, bar 3 is G, bar 4 is G, bar 5, A minor, bar 6, A minor, bar 7, F, bar 8, F as well. So now, how are we going to play this 8 bars? Are we going to down, down, up, down, up, island strum it? I don't know. That's been done a lot. What if we try something a little bit different? What if we try to Travis pick it? Travis picking is a repetitive right hand picking pattern. And the thing with Travis picking is that you learn a pattern that fits over one measure and you repeat it for every measure that follows. So we're going to learn one pattern and repeat it 8 times in a row. So on the screen now we can see one measure and it's out of the C chord. Now I'm going to recommend you all use a 3-finger approach for finger picking this. So thumb gets string 4 and 3, index gets string 2, middle gets string 1. Now we're going to start off plucking 4 and 1 together. That's going to be a quarter note, and then we're going to play all eighths after it. So it's going to be 3, 2, 4, 1, 3, 2. So if I put that together, I have... Sounds pretty lovely, right? Remember, keep that rhythm nice and steady. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. So here's the cool thing. If we look at measures 1 through 4, look at just measure 1 and 2. You can see you play that pattern twice. And it's over the C chord. Then you play the pattern again twice, but this time it's over the G chord. If we look at measures 5 through 8, again, just look at the first 2. 2 times for A minor, and you guessed it, 2 times for F. So if I get rid of all this tab and I play through this 8-bar form with our Travis picking pattern, sounds like this. So pretty lovely sounding so far. And guess what? We have 2 out of 3 parts of music. We have the harmony and the rhythm. What we're missing is melody. So let's add a melody. And to do that, we can actually write our melody out of the major scale of the key we're playing in, which is C. So we're going to learn how to play the major scale for C major in 2 positions. In our open position, and then again going linear up 1 string. So if we look at the tab just for the open position, I'm going to ignore string 4. I'm going to start from 3 going down because that gives us our familiar do, re, mi sound. And it sounds like this. Okay, so take a second, get familiar with that scale. If you haven't learned it before, you can run it up and backwards as well. Now, if we look at going linear up string number 1, it's going to be the same scale, but it's just going to be an octave up in pitch. So we start where we left off, which was 3 on string 1, which is also the C note. And if I play going up this first string, I have right, same exact scale, just higher in pitch. So you want to get both of those positions memorized, and don't forget to add the extra couple notes for the first one. So because those extra 2 notes that we omitted at the beginning on string 4, they are perfectly usable notes that you can use for your melody. So here's the thing with your melody. Your melody can be any of the notes that we just played in the C major scale here or the C major scale here. You can use any of the notes. As you get further into your songwriting journey, you're going to start to realize that some notes work better than other notes, depending on the chord that you're playing behind them. But for now, remember, we're keeping it simple, so feel free to use any note and just trust your ear, trust your gut, go with what feels right or sounds good to you. So here's the melody that I came up with. Let me go ahead and just play through this a couple times so we can hear what it sounds like. So that helps us just kind of get it familiar hearing it 2 times back to back. But what can you tell off the bat? You can tell a couple things. One, it's a very simple melody. And two, it is a repetitive pattern. If you look at just measure 1 and 2, look at measure 1. It's a whole note. Look at measure 2. It's 4 quarter notes. Look at measure 3. It's a whole note. Look at measure 4. 4 quarter notes. Sounds like this. Look at measure 5 and 6. Look at measure 7 and 8. It's the exact same pattern, copied and pasted every 2 measures. So why is that? Was I lazy? No, not at all. I was taking advantage of repetition, because if we repeat something over and over again, it's more likely to be remembered by the listener. And if they can remember it easy, well, that probably means it's going to be catchy. So as you write your first little melody, try to keep it simple. Use simple rhythms and try to do a repetitive pattern, just like I showed you right here. Now, the question is, how do we put it together? How do we put the Travis picking pattern integrated into the melody? Well, let's take a look at how. So on the screen right here, you can see that I have added a red circle to every melody note that we have. So those circled notes, those are the ones that you want to play with more oomph. You want to emphasize them so that they ring above the others. So if I play just measure 1 and 2, take a listen to how it sounds. So if we look at just measure 1, we can see that it is the Travis picking pattern to a T. Look at measure 2, you can notice that it is pretty much just the melody, although you are going to hit the open G string at the same time as beat 1, just to let it sustain and add a little harmony to the mix. Now, if you look at measure 3 and 4, it's going to be the same thing. It's the Travis picking, followed by the melody by itself with the open G ringing above. Then if we look at measure 5 and 6, same thing. And measure 7 and 8. Only difference here, instead of plucking 4 and 1 together to start off that Travis picking pattern, you're going to pluck 4 and 2 because the melody note falls on string 2. But measure 8, same thing. So let's do this. Let's take a listen to what this melody sounds like put together but in a song structure. So Mika is going to be playing the Travis picking pattern, and then he's going to switch into our chord melody, and then he's going to go back to the Travis picking pattern, and that gives it kind of a song structure. So let's take a listen to how it sounds all put together. Now, one thing that's cool that Mika did is that he added a little bit of a swing feel to his rhythm. So that is always a neat little trick that you can use in songwriting. And we're actually going to be talking about tips and tricks that you can use in tip number 3. But before we get there, in tip number 2, we learned that it is important to start simple. When we start simple, we set ourselves up for success and we don't get overwhelmed. So when you're writing your first songs, try to emulate what we just did right here. We started with a easy key to play out of, C major. We chose a chord progression that was diatonic to the key, and it was very common and very straightforward, a 1-5-6-4. And we wrote a melody that had very simple rhythms. It was literally just whole notes and quarter notes. So as you can see, guys, keep it as simple as possible. So maybe your next song that you write could be a blues tune, because blues uses 3 chords, and it is 3 chords that revolve around a 12-bar form. So again, it's very simple style music to start with. So keep all that stuff in mind. Let's jump into tip number 3, which is a tip that actually comes from famed guitarist Tommy Emmanuel. Now, when I was in music college, Tommy came to our school and gave a clinic. And at the end of the clinic, we had a Q&A session, and one of my peers asked him, how does he write such beautiful sounding music? His response is our tip number 3, which is study the greats. But what does that actually mean? Well, it means if you like a song, analyze it. Figure out what key it's in, what the chord progression is. Are those chords diatonic to the key, or is there mode mixture happening? How does the melody relate to the harmony? All of these kind of theory-based questions are great starting points, but the questions you're asking and how you dive into the song doesn't only have to be theoretical based. It can also be playing based. So for example, if there is a solo, study the soloist. Are they playing soft? Are they playing very dynamic? How is their feel? How are they playing the notes? Because playing the right notes is half the battle. How you play them is the other half. So you can study it from both sides of the coin, from a music theory, analytical perspective, but also from a playing perspective. Now, I'm going to give you guys a couple tips on how I studied the greats to improve my songwriting. And the first one I'm going to share with you relates to tip number 2. In tip number 2, we learned our own song, or I should say we wrote our own song. And that song was based out of a Travis picking pattern. Well, I found out about Travis picking by learning the song Dust in the Wind by Kansas. That song is probably the most famous example of Travis picking in classic rock music. And I was a young teen when I learned that tune. Before that, I had no idea what Travis picking was. I didn't know it even existed. But because I learned that one song, I was able to compose these other 3 tunes. They all use Travis picking at their root. So if you want to check them out, I'll put it in the description box below. But as you can see, just learning one song taught me a new playing technique that I could use in my own compositions. Now, I'll give you another example. A few years ago, I arranged this song. If you're not familiar with what we just heard, it is called Sakura Sakura. It is a traditional Japanese tune, and the melody is written out of a pentatonic scale. It's called the in pentatonic scale. It's a Japanese scale that I, again, had never heard of or never used before until I arranged that song. And I only learned about it because I was curious on why the melody sounded the way it sounded. So I started to look into the song and I started to learn, oh, there's a pentatonic scale used in Japanese music that gives it a really cool sound. And when I learned that scale, I was able to use it in my own writing for this Japanese inspired song. So as you can see, the more songs that you learn and the more that you look into how they were written, the better you're going to become at writing, because you're going to be constantly learning new things that you can use for your own compositions. So that's going to be everything for this video, guys. I will leave you with a couple last tips. The first one came from a guitar instructor that was very impactful as I was coming of age, and he said, the more you write, the better you get. And I know that sounds obvious, but sometimes it's good to hear these obvious things because it is so true. The more you write, the better your songs become. And then the last thing I want to share with you guys is our songwriting course. So quite a few years ago, I wrote this course, and it is a really neat course because it deep dives into the music theory behind one song. One song that I wrote that is a really cute sounding song. If you want to deep dive into the melody, the harmony, and rhythm, you want to do an analytical music theory deep dive into how it was composed, that course is going to break it down step by step. So if you're a music theory nerd like I am, definitely check out that course. I'll link it in the description box below as well. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care.